You may have heard of the term 6 degrees of separation before. This theory explains how everyone is connected to everyone else in 6 steps or fewer. But did you know there's a similar theory called the 3 degrees of influence? It started off when a study followed around 5,000 participants for 20 years. The researchers found that if one person is happy, their friend was 15% more likely to be happy too. But it didn't stop there. A friend of a friend was 10% more likely to be happy, and even at 3 degrees of separation, there was still a statistically significant increase of 6%. Since then, other experiments have found the same rule applies for a variety of different things, including obesity, smoking, cooperative behavior, and loneliness. Take the example of cooperating. If you do a random act of kindness for someone else, that person will remember the gesture, and next time they'll be more likely to help others. Then that next person will also become more likely to help someone. This process quickly becomes a cascade. So basically, your behaviors not only influence your friend, but your friend's friend's friend. On the other hand, this means that someone you don't even know could be subtly influencing your behavior too. All this means you should be very aware of who you hang around. Now, this isn't a strict rule. Not everything has 3 degrees of influence. But the general idea is that things ripple through a social network, and it's interesting to see just how far that ripple travels. On the other hand, what can you do to maximize the power of your social network? Well, this requires us to look at a different field of research. So let's say you're trying to find a new job. What's the best way to use your social network? Most people will try to build stronger relationships with the right person. I mean, the closer you are to that person, the more likely they'll be to help you out, right? Or maybe they'll ask their good friends if they know of any job availabilities. Basically, they'll rely on their strong ties. But in reality, it's those who are least connected to us that are most likely to help us out. This is all because of how social networks are shaped. You know the saying that birds of a feather flock together? Well, a review of over 100 different studies concluded that this is most definitely true. Notice how black people tend to hang around other black people, or how your group of friends come from a similar background? In fact, the factors which create the strongest divide is race, followed by age, religion, education, and occupation. Furthermore, the review also found that the more different you are from another person, the faster your relationship will dissolve. As a result, networks are often made up of clusters of like-minded people linked together by acquaintances. These are called weak ties. Now, if you go out there and ask your strong ties for new jobs, they're going to be pretty similar to you. Similar age, similar background, and similar perspective. Therefore, they are more likely to have the same information as you do. Compare this to your weak ties. Sure, you're not as connected to them, and you don't get along as well. But this means they're probably part of a different network, they probably come from a different background, and hence they're more likely to have new information, such as where to get a job. As evidence, one study found that only 16% of people found their job through a person they were regularly seeing. The rest came from people who they only saw occasionally or rarely. In fact, you are almost twice as likely to get a job from someone you rarely spoke to compared to someone you were regularly contacting. This paradox was called the strength of weak ties. Now, this doesn't just apply to jobs. You can apply this to finding a new boyfriend or girlfriend. Obviously, if you ask your best friend to suggest you someone new, they're probably going to know the same people as you do. But when you talk to a weak tie, you're exposed to a whole nother network. In fact, with pretty much anything that involves the spread of information, it's better to go to the weak tie. So, while it's good to have close friends, don't neglect the power of weak ties, because they offer the most potential for change in your life.
You look very nice today, Vivian.
Thank you. Full of hair. A hair full of yarn. It's, I must go.
Well, aren't you the sweetest space toy I ever met?
In a 2011 article by the Association for Psychological Science, researchers analyzed the results of the 2004 Olympics in Athens, Greece, and discovered that across the board, athletes wearing red performed far better than athletes wearing blue, especially in aggressive hand-to-hand events like boxing and wrestling. And in a similar study about Taekwondo, 42 referees were shown 2 sets of videos of red and blue opponents sparring, and then were asked to award them points based on their performance. Now get this, the second set of videos was identical to the first, except that the colors of the fighters were digitally reversed, so that the fighter wearing blue before was then wearing red and vice versa. In both cases, the fighter in red was awarded an average of 13% more points than the fighter in blue. Is that not totally insane? It's almost exactly like the games, but in real life. So should we all start boycotting blue teams now? Returning to tournament hosts and demanding recounts? Well, maybe it's not as bad as all that. Let's take a look at MOBAs. The most popular MOBA in the world, in fact, League of Legends. And hey, that's statistically speaking. Don't be giving me a hard time making judgment calls on that one. In a study last year for the Daily Dot with a sample size of 224 games, the team with 34 wins over the other was... Wait, the blue team? And why by so much? As the article points out, that's like the blue team winning 4 games for every 3 games that the red team does. So we need some more statistics here. Well, another prime example came in the 2014 North American Summer Playoffs, where the blue side had a 79.3% win rate over the red side. That's enormous! So what's actually happening in the games? Taking our League of Legends example, aside from kills and capture points, there's also a handful of secondary objectives that can grant your team various resource advantages and buffs. At the time of our example where blue teams dominated, blue players in the study tended to go straight for the red team's defensive towers early game, where the red teams by and large went jungling. At that time in the game's evolution, killing jungle monsters gave resources in the form of gold, but didn't directly impact the player's abilities. Taking down towers also gave gold, but unlike jungling, also served to weaken the area they stood in for the red team, which helped blue team during the more crucial late game. But why blue over red in League, but then red over blue in FPS? Well, the problem isn't the game, it's us. It's actually a lingering quirk in our psychology left over from evolution. Neuroscientist Gerald D. Kralik spearheaded a study at Dartmouth to investigate the effects of various colors on the psyche of primates. Male and female experimenters approached the monkeys in pairs, wearing various combinations of solid red, green, and blue color shirts and hats, and then would simultaneously present apple slices before backing away. They'd then record which apple slice the monkey would choose. As you may have guessed from the way I decided to include the results in this video, the results were mind-blowing. The monkeys responded exactly the same across the board regardless of practically any variable. The experimenter being male or female had no effect on the choice of apple slice, nor did the experimenters wearing the color green, or even the experimenters wearing the color blue. However, in almost every case, definitively the person wearing red was totally avoided, which according to the researchers indicates that primates and humans avoid the color red. We view it as aggressive, which stems from an evolutionary adaptation where we perceive it as being stronger and more dangerous than other colors. That's why stop signs work so well, because they elicit a primary fear response, at least outside of California. And apparently Arkansas too, if Gaijin Goomba's Twitter account is to be believed. Primates, including humans, take a lot of cues from what we see around us. Looking at the redness of someone's skin, their lips, or even their, Cover your ears, kids and nuns. Their dingleberries can inspire all kinds of aggressive and submissive actions in us, because in the past we didn't have language and context to do that work for us. Red was the color of blood. It meant intense emotion, it meant danger, and it meant power. And according to the scientists at Dartmouth, this effect is absolutely strong enough to affect competitions, even to this day. So much so that following their primate study, they issued a warning for anyone holding a competition that this color can actually be used, quote, in ways that may unfairly influence people, end quote. Basically, it's easier to win if you wear red because it makes you subconsciously more aggressive, and it makes your opponents subconsciously more afraid of you. And there's nothing really that we can do about it. It's in our evolutionary background. So that investigation goes a long way to explain the results in Unreal, Team Fortress, Halo, but it leaves some big holes, especially when it comes to all the opposite evidence coming from League of Legends. Why don't red teams win there? Surprise, surprise, more evolutionary psychology. In another study from the University of British Columbia, 600 subjects were asked to perform cognitive tasks on screens that were either red, blue, or white. What they found was that while red heightened our alertness, focus, and attention, blue instead encouraged people to be creative, think long-term, and relax. That's because instead of blood and sex, blue makes us think of the sky, cool, still water, natural elements in the world around us. In the League of Legends example, while the red team was racking up kills against giant savage beasts in the jungle for immediate rewards, the blue team tended to look more long-term. Their strategy was based on thinking ahead and strategically weighing which attack points would be most rewarding early and then also later on in the game. Theirs was a style of gameplay based around cool-headed strategy and an active resistance to the temptation of running into the jungle for some aggressive fast burn wins. But you know what? It doesn't end there, because the influence of color not only affects your gaming, but literally everything that you do in the world, and that includes everything that you buy. In advertising, the color red has much the same impact on your brain as it does in the context of the game. Red triggers urgency, focus, fast decision making, otherwise known as impulse buying. Ever notice that almost all clearance racks are labeled with red signs? The red sign is telling you to buy this now because otherwise it's gonna be gone, focusing your instinctual attention and telling you to act now, think later. Blue, on the other hand, triggers our creativity and long-term planning. In the real world, advertisers sometimes use blue in stores designed for shoppers on a budget or bulk purchases. They want to appeal to shoppers who need to be strategic about their shopping to make sure that they walk out feeling comfortable with what they just got and what they spent on it. Think of Target versus Walmart, two huge box store chains. Target is all red and tends to be the higher end of the two stores. It's pitching to people who can spend a bit more and impulse shop a bit. But Walmart works the opposite way, with blue rollback signs greeting you at the door, larger bulk purchases, all things telling you that you can feel comfortable exploring the store, calmly filling your cart. Each model is designed in its own way to make its customers want the products they're buying and then come back for more. And it works, whether we realize it or not. And it's not just advertisers who understand this principle. Cities in some countries with higher suicide rates, like Japan or the Nordic countries that are all dark with winters that are really long, have started to use blue-tinted light in public places as subtle ways to make people feel calmer, reduce crime, and bring down suicide rates. Some airports use blue light pods to help people adjust to jet lag because the blue light makes your head feel clearer and helps you stay more awake. Ever wonder why you're able to stay awake and clear-headed longer when you look at your phone or tablet in bed? All your mobile devices emit light in the blue spectrum. The effect even works if you're blind, because the light receptors that sense it have nothing to do with vision. Red light, on the other hand, has effects all of its own that science is beginning to understand. According to NASA, devices they've been testing that emit light far into the red spectrum can actually help your cells heal 200 times faster than they do in full spectrum light. It's almost like magic. So the next time you enter a round of serious competitive gaming, or even just that casual weekend Unreal competition on that old Gateway desktop with the cow print on it, make sure that you're choosing your side carefully. It might make all the difference. Playing a strategy game, insist on blue. Playing a high-action, aggression-based shooter, Red all the way. Knowing how to use the power of color to your advantage is serious business. Or, if nothing else, I just gave you a new excuse for losing other than lag.
On April 2nd of 2014, the Associated Press released a report exposing how the US government recently attempted to topple the Cuban government yet again. This time the plot hinged on the creation of a communications network called Zunzuneo, which was essentially a primitive version of Twitter. The plan, which was cooked up by the US Agency for International Development, USAID, and the US State Department, was to build up a large following of users and then push them towards revolt. The network was built using shell companies and financed through a foreign bank to hide their connections to Washington. The Obama administration defended the program, saying that it, quote, had disclosed the initiative to Congress. Of course, we all know it's perfectly alright to use covert operations to topple a foreign government, as long as you let Congress know a little bit in advance. No big deal, they just want to be kept in the loop. As shocking and absurd as these revelations may be to the general public, the truth of the matter is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. The US government and its allies have been using the internet as a covert weapon for some time now. Much of the evidence of these activities got mainstream coverage, but the corporate media is very careful not to refer to that evidence in the context of current events. So, let's connect a few dots here. In 2011, it came to light that the US military had developed a sock puppet software for creating and managing fake online identities. These sock puppet accounts were to be used to spread propaganda on social media sites, forums, and blogs. The software, which was described as an online persona management service, allows one soldier to control up to 10 separate identities based all over the world. When this program was exposed, the US government claimed that the program was never to be used on English-speaking audiences. Considering that these are the same people who swore up and down that the NSA surveillance program never targeted US citizens, we can take that with a grain of salt. But it's worth noting that they explicitly acknowledged in their statement that the program was intended for covert operations in foreign countries. A leaked document recently made public by Glenn Greenwald showed that the UK's GCHQ has been running a similar program through a unit called the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group, or JTRIG. According to the documents, JTRIG relies on two primary tactics. One, the injection of false material into the internet in order to destroy the reputation of its targets. And two, the use of social sciences and other techniques to manipulate online discourse and activism towards desired outcomes. Among the methods promoted in the document were false flag operations, posting material to the internet and falsely attributing it to someone else, fake victim blog posts pretending to be a victim of the individual whose reputation they want to destroy, posting, quote, negative information on various forums, luring targets into sexual encounters in order to destroy their reputations, sending emails and text messages to the target's friends, neighbors, and coworkers, and, quote, crafting messaging campaigns to go viral. The documents place an emphasis on using online techniques to trigger events in the real world. Now remember that the copycat Twitter network designed to topple Cuba was put together by USAID. USAID maintains a public front of humanitarian aid and democracy promotion, but the Cuba scandal confirms what many geopolitical analysts have been saying for years, that USAID, like its sibling the National Endowment for Democracy, is nothing more than a branch of the US intelligence apparatus in disguise. This confirmation also further exposes Washington's hand in toppling the Ukrainian government earlier this year. These were US-backed rebels that killed thousands of innocent civilians with nerve gas. Those that funded this atrocity are still walking free. Those who coordinated the sniper killings in Kiev are still walking free. In fact, they're in positions of power. And yet the mainstream media and these so-called world leaders won't even so much as call them out. Just think about that for a second. Front group sock puppets, public relations stunts, and outright murder. That's how Washington and its allies topple governments and manipulate public opinion in the age of the internet. But make no mistake, this is not new. The purpose of this video is to help you launch a friend bomb. We'll start with step-by-step instructions, and then we'll explain the philosophy behind it. If you want to expand your network of like-minded friends, a simple way to do it is to take this video, post it on Facebook or Google+, either on your personal profile, in a group, or on a page, and add the hashtag friendbomb in the description. Anyone who wants to participate just needs to type the words "add me" and a comment beneath that post. If this post is on Facebook, go through the comments and send a friend request to each person that indicates that they want to be added. If the post is on Google+, add those people to your circles. Those who find this friend bomb while it's in progress can then make it grow even more by clicking the share button on that post. Now, if you're participating in a friend bomb on Facebook, it is of utmost importance to remember to never answer when Facebook asks you if you know the person outside of Facebook. Facebook doesn't want people to use their system to network, so they penalize people by blocking their ability to add friends if you answer no. You don't have to lie, just don't answer. Now, of course, posting this video isn't the only method of launching a friend bomb. There are several other ways. In its most rudimentary form, a friend bomb can be started with a text-only post or an image with instructions explaining how to participate. That's how we've been running friend bombs on our page up to this point. This video was just designed to make it easier. Rather than come up with those instructions yourself, you can just paste the link to this video, type the friend bomb hashtag, and go. The logic here is that if you make it easy, more people are likely to participate. So why use friend bombs? 3 reasons. 1. Waking up is a lot more comfortable if you have like-minded people around you. You'll no longer be the lone nutcase. You'll now be the pack of nutcases. And who picks a fight with a pack of nutcases? Like it or not, strength in numbers is a real variable. 2. By connecting our friends to our other friends, our network becomes more dense, and this facilitates the spread of information. We're up against multi-million-dollar corporations and their propaganda machines. We have to think outside the box if we're going to beat them in this game. 3. It opens up the opportunity to expose new people to ideas that they wouldn't normally come in contact with. This doesn't mean that you should invest all your time trying to wake up every brainwashed idiot that shows up on your friend list, but you can make a difference by posting information on your timeline and by commenting on other people's posts. Now, obviously, this approach to social media may be scary for some people. Perhaps you've been very careful not to open your mouth and say the wrong things in front of the wrong people. You don't want to stir up controversy. I get that. But if you see where we're headed, then it should be obvious that it's time to get over these inhibitions. We need to rock the boat. We need to be pushing the comfort zone and waking people up even if they don't want to be woken up. The crowd is sleepwalking towards the edge of a cliff, and they are carrying you with them. Now, you don't have to use friend bombs. You don't even have to use social media. You can do this in the physical world by organizing meetups and street activism groups. Use whatever tools you have at your disposal. However you go about it, it's time to build that network of awareness and start speaking out like your children's future depends on it. Because it does. Now, for those of you who are afraid that speaking out will get you on some kind of watch list, what you need to understand is that that's what they want. They want you to be fearful and to stick your head in the sand. If they can keep you silent, they can keep you isolated. And if they keep you isolated, then you will feel powerless even though in reality, you hold all the cards. This is the critical mass of awakening. That moment when we the people realize that we already have the power to stop this. Once the people come to that realization and organize themselves, it's over.
These days, viral videos are everywhere, and very often there's some political or social message behind it. One day it's about stopping racism, next day it's about gender equality. Well, remember Kony 2012? In a couple of days, it amassed tens of millions of views. Yet, despite all that public outrage, Kony has pretty much been forgotten. So, why do we no longer care about something that was so big and so emotionally stirring at that time? To understand more, take a look at this experiment. Participants were instructed to walk over to another building and give a speech on the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, ironically, on that path was an injured man. The question was, would they stop to help him? Turns out, having the thought of Good Samaritan fresh in their mind didn't make them any more likely to help out. The one factor that did was whether participants were in a hurry or not. If researchers told them that there was no rush, 63% of people stopped to help. But if they were told to hurry, the vast majority zipped by and only 10% helped. That's a massive difference, right? But it says something. Maybe it's not that we're heartless. Maybe it's more to do with the context we're in. So, think about it this way. The Good Samaritan story is like these heartfelt videos. They leave you with a strong message, but when you go out into the real world and lose yourself in life's daily problems, that message is forgotten. And that's why activism on social media rarely works. They evoke strong emotions, but it's only temporary, and it doesn't translate into long-term action. But it's not all bad news. If you really want to change society's behavior, psychology has an answer. Instead of trying to change the person, you should try to change the context around them. Psychologists call it channel factors, small but critical factors that makes it easier for a person to engage in a particular behavior. For example, take a look at organ donation rates amongst different countries. Even though some of these countries are very similar, the donation rates are drastically different. Why is this? Simple. These countries have an opt-out system. This means people are automatically organ donors, and if they don't want to be, they must put in effort to opt out. These ones, on the other hand, require people to register to become organ donors. So, by making it as easy as possible, you can drastically increase donation rates. Now, you might be wondering why Netherlands is a bit higher than the rest of its kind. Well, in a massive campaign, the government mailed every citizen, pleading them to become a donor. Yet, this was nowhere near as effective as a simple opt-out system. Hence, it's better to focus on the context rather than trying to change the individual. Another example is speeding. Governments spend millions of dollars trying to come up with ad campaigns that target speeding. But, compare it to this. Next time you go around a sharp bend, you may see striped lines painted on the road. These lines aren't a uniform distance apart. as you get closer to the bend, the lines get closer too. So, imagine that you were in the car and you see the road coming to you faster and faster. You'll instantly try to slow down, right? This intervention is more effective because every time the driver sees it, they will reduce their speed. However, the ads will most likely be forgotten and hence lose its effect. Lastly, consider this clever tactic to persuade students to get tetanus shots. At first, researchers tried scaring them with facts like how tetanus causes muscle spasms so strong they can break your bones. Still, only 3% of people ended up getting vaccinations, so they tried a different approach. This time, the students were given a map of the college and asked, when will it be convenient for you to get an inoculation? They then traced a route from the lecture room to the university clinic where they could get an injection. This time, 28% of students got the vaccination. That's a 9-fold increase. What happened was that by giving them a traced map, the researchers made it as easy as possible for the students to get vaccinations. They didn't have to plan anything because it had all been done for them. On the other hand, the scare stories were probably just forgotten in the next lecture. Overall, you can see that activism on social media tries to evoke strong emotions within a person, hoping that it will feel the necessary action for change. But this just doesn't happen. Instead, it's easier, more effective, and sometimes even cheaper to focus on changing the context a person is in. And that's how you make an impact on the world.